guys, so today I thought I would take a little bit of a look at something that I have noticed a growing demand for recently. It seems like on a lot of forums that you go to nowadays, people are asking, does Rwanda have a digital nomad visa? Now at the moment, Rwanda does not have a digital nomad visa, but I thought I would take this opportunity to do a really quick dive into what it is and whether or not it might be useful for the country to adopt one. So first off, what is a digital nomad visa? Well, traditionally, a traditional residency visa means that you move to a country, you set up a business in that country, you are resident in that country, you work in that country, you pay taxes in that country, which is what I do. So I moved to Rwanda, I set up a business in Rwanda, I live here, I pay taxes here. But a digital nomad visa is aimed at remote workers. So you've probably heard this a lot more since the pandemic and people were forced to work at home. And then people realised they quite like working at home. And then people realised once the travel restrictions lifted that you could actually work from anywhere in the world for a company anywhere in the world. So for example, I could be here in Rwanda and on a digital nomad visa, I would have the right to live in Rwanda, but I would be working for companies, say in America or France or Asia, and they would be paying me to a bank account probably in my home country. So if I'm British, I will be working from Rwanda for a company, say in America, paying me to an account in the UK. What the digital nomad visa allows me to do is to be a temporary resident of the country that I choose to live in whilst I'm working online. So now I'm going to take a very, very quick look at some of the countries around the world that have introduced a digital nomad visa. And I'm going to show you what their regulations are and, whether or not that's working for them. And I'm just going to say now, I did enlist the help of ChatGPT to help to gather this information and some of these case studies. So I'm assuming it's right, but if you live in one of these countries and I've got it wrong, please do correct me below. So here we go. Around 66 countries worldwide currently offer a digital nomad visa. The first one was Barbados. It's called the Barbados Welcome Stamp and it's valid for 1 year, but you have to prove an annual income of $50,000 or more. Estonia was next to jump in the ring. Their digital nomad visa is also valid for 1 year. You have to show proof that you've done remote work earning at least €4,500 per month for the past 6 months before your application. Both of these feel a little unobtainable to me. Portugal wants to see €2,800 in the bank monthly and Croatia €2,300. Costa Rica has the rentista visa if you have a monthly income of $3,000 or if you deposit $60,000 into a local bank account. If you can prove $1,500 per month or a bank balance of $18,000, you can head off for a 2-year stay in Brazil. This seems like the best deal so far. If you like the look of Asia, you can head to Indonesia with proof of $2,000 in the bank. That's valid for 60 days, but you can extend twice, so a total of 6 months. Thailand and Malaysia also have options for higher earners. The United Arab Emirates, Dubai, offer a 1-year nomad visa if you're earning $5,000 a month. And several countries in Africa have already implemented a digital nomad visa. These include Cape Verde, Mauritius, Namibia, Kenya and South Africa. Of those, the more affordable appear to be Namibia at $62 for the visa and $2,000 in the bank, Cape Verde, who want to see an average bank balance of $1,500 over the past 6 months for a 6-month stay, and Mauritius, who offer a 1-year stay and don't appear to charge for visa processing. Kenya and South Africa only welcome high rollers, with Kenya requiring a minimum annual income of $55,000 and South Africa $36,000 for a 12-month stay that you can extend. So what I found really, really cool about this is that the idea was really first implemented in Barbados and very, very quickly, very soon after, it was also taken up by Estonia. And what I find really interesting about that is when you think about countries on the cutting edge of technology and remote work, Barbados and Estonia would not naturally have been top of my list. Those wouldn't have been the countries that I'd have immediately thought about. So it's really, really cool that they are leading the way on this and promoting remote work and being so welcoming to foreigners and saying, come on, let's set you up in a cafe over here so that you can do your work and then you can spend your money in our country. So I find that really, really interesting. And I feel like Rwanda is kind of primed for that, because Rwanda's got a real focus on trying to develop smart technology. It's kind of got the vibe that a digital nomad visa would be something that would be in alignment with Rwanda. So what I thought I'd do now is just to take a quick look at what the pros of introducing a digital nomad visa would be. So how it would benefit Rwanda. And then I was going to take a little look at what the downside to it is, and anything that, you know, a country should probably be aware of before getting involved in this. And then I was going to wrap it up by taking a look at what's in it for the digital nomads. So what's in it for the person traveling around the world, what would make Rwanda attractive to a digital nomad, and what might put them off a little bit. So let's get going with that. So the really obvious pro here is that you're getting people into the country. And this is something that Rwanda's been pursuing anyway by dropping the pre-entry visa requirements. So anybody from any country in the world can currently turn up in Rwanda and get a visa on arrival. You don't have to pre-book one. You can just turn up and get a 30-day tourist entry visa. You can also, once you're in the country, extend that to 90 days if you'd like to. And there's also an East Africa 90-day visa that gets you into Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda, multiple entry. So, you know, it's fairly easy for people to enter Rwanda anyway, and that is by design. Rwanda is like, yeah, come along, see what you think, see if you can start something here, see if you want to start a business, see if you want to, you know, invest. They're very welcoming to people coming through the door anyway. So adding a digital nomad visa to that probably wouldn't be a big step. And the other thing about that is that you're inviting in skilled workers, because digital nomads tend to be quite good at what they do. They know the online world, they're savvy enough to be working for big companies around the world, so you're getting connections there, international connections, but most importantly, they are spending money. They're usually earning in euros or pounds or dollars, but they're living in your country and they're spending their money. They're spending it on rent, they're spending it on transport, they're spending it on food in cafes and restaurants, and they're spending it on going to see tourist sites, you know, because if you're going to be living in a country for anywhere from a few months up to a year, you're going to go and have a look at it. So, you know, you might go off to see Lake Kivu, or you might go and see Gisenyi. You might even stay in Gisenyi and work in Gisenyi, stay in Musanze and work in Musanze, because when you're working remotely, you can travel about. They're going to be buying souvenirs, they're going to be buying shopping, weekly food shops, you know, they're going to be injecting money into the economy. And that is the big draw. And also, if they're bringing foreign currency with them and exchanging it in the country, they're adding to a country's foreign currency reserves, which is always very useful for an economy. So that's pretty much the big motivator for countries to introduce a digital nomad visa. And there are additional knock-ons from that, because whilst people are here, you know, they're interacting with the communities, they're interacting with people, they're making friends, they're making connections, they're making business networks. There's going to be a sharing of information going on there. And also it's good for the image of a country to be seen to be welcoming to digital nomads and to be on the forefront of this new form of working, which doesn't look like it's going to be dying down anytime soon. If you look at the statistics, the word digital nomad, it kind of cropped up for the first time around the end of the 1980s. But then by 2012 and the boost with the pandemic, it's just skyrocketed. This graph shows how frequently that word is now in use, you know, so people are searching for it online, they're publishing articles about it. The idea of being a digital nomad is not going away anytime soon. So, you know, it's not a bad idea for a country to jump on board with that if they want to see skilled workers coming into the country and spending money. So I've talked about all of the good stuff that comes with implementing a digital nomad visa, but what are the downsides? Are there any? Well, yeah, there are. And, you know, there are a few of them. If you start looking online, you will get a list of pros and cons. I'm going to focus in on the ones that I really think might affect Rwanda a little bit. Rwanda is very, very focused on taxation, and especially income taxation. So I don't know that it would sit very easily with Rwanda, the thought of somebody living in Rwanda but working abroad and therefore not paying income tax in the country. Now, this does seem to be something that most countries that have implemented the digital nomad visa seem to be struggling with. And the approach, the answer to that has largely been to make sure that anybody applying for a digital nomad visa either proves that they are earning a fairly solid annual income. Like I think Barbados was something like $50,000. You have to prove that you're earning that per year. And just a quick calculation, that appears to be more than the average annual income in the UK at the moment, if you break that down. Or Costa Rica, where, you know, they suggest that you put a $60,000 deposit in a bank account in the country. I think that's unrealistic, and I don't think that that is why most digital nomads become digital nomads. I think there's this idea amongst many countries that if you are traveling the world working remotely, you must be earning mega bucks. But I don't think that's the truth for a lot of people who would want to apply for a digital nomad visa. I certainly couldn't afford to apply for a visa at that price, or to prove that I was earning that amount. I think that for a lot of people, it was largely kicked off by the pandemic as people got used to working from home, and then it was difficult to transition to working back in an office again. And more people over those 2 years of the pandemic went, well, what else could I do? You know, what skills do I have? What talents do I have? What interests do I have that I could potentially turn into a business? And if they could do it online, they then realised, well, I could travel and I could do this from other countries whilst I travel, which doesn't equate to the same thing as earning a lot of money. So just from dropping in and out of community groups online and forums to do with digital nomads, you kind of get the sense that most people are looking for a way to live more cheaply and just to have a good quality of life without having to earn mega bucks, because it's always a trade-off. You know, if you want to earn a lot of money, you usually have to work very, very long hours. And people would rather work fewer hours but have a nice quality of life. So a lot of digital nomads are probably looking to live off less. You know, it's okay to earn less if that means you've got more free time, but you can still afford to eat and you've got a roof over your head. I think that is actually the attraction for a lot of people towards a digital lifestyle, is just dropping out of that rat race where you're spending all of your time working. Because to have a lot of money is fine, but you don't need a lot of money. Most people don't need to be millionaires. They just need an income that allows them to live happily, to eat, you know, to socialize, and time is then worth more than the money. And I think that's a slight jarring principle when you're looking at the amount of money that most countries are asking digital nomads to prove that they're earning. A lot of people attracted to the digital nomad lifestyle are never going to be earning that amount of money, or not consistently, because as well, a lot of them are working for themselves and they are freelancing, and freelancing and contracting are never reliable sources of income. I've been a contractor for most of my adult life, and you know, some months you get big contracts and you're doing really, really well, and other months you're earning nothing. So you're using that money you've earned to try and coast through those other months. It's very unpredictable. If you imagine, for people like myself who are resident in Rwanda, working here, paying tax here, to then see somebody else coming into the country and they're working, but they're not paying tax here, you could see how that could create a little bit of a divide. You know, you could see how that could create a little bit of tension when people living in the country are, you know, they're earning and they're having to pay tax, income tax, and people coming in are earning but they're not. Hi guys, editing me jumping in really quickly just to clarify that. I made it sound like people working remotely aren't paying any tax. They are paying tax in the country that they're getting paid to, but there can be a really big disparity there because, for example, as a British person, when I earn in the UK and I get paid to the UK, I get a £12,500 personal income allowance before I have to pay any tax. Whereas if I'm working as a sole trader here, pretty much you're paying tax from the first franc you're earning. So, you know, it can be a bit of a disparity. I didn't mean to suggest that they're not paying tax. They are paying tax, but you know, it's still a disparity. And I could definitely see how that could create a bit of tension. And also Rwanda is very focused on taxation. And I feel that the instinct response will be to introduce some form of tax of these digital nomads, which would automatically then make the country not as attractive as other countries. But I think, again, we have to circle back down to the pro, which is as long as these people are here, for 6 months or a year, they are spending. And I'm going to come back to this in a moment, because I think it's more important to accept the fact that they are spending more money here than the average resident probably is. And then to find ways of encouraging that, rather than to start by saying, oh, well, then we must find a way of taxing them, because I don't think that's going to promote the digital nomad brand. So something else that has come up on forums and I've seen floating around a bit is that some countries have started to have a bit of a backlash against tourism and over-tourism, and sort of preventing people from going and sitting in cafes and working in cafes, because they say that it's taking away space from locals who want to go and sit there. I don't think that's currently going to be an issue in Rwanda. Something that is very attractive about Rwanda is there are a lot of cafes and good quality restaurants and places that you would just want to go and sit and work. And so far, as a foreigner, I've never been in a cafe and had a Rwandan person walk in and stand there and go, oh, I have nowhere to sit down, there are all of these foreigners. I think if you ever did hear that, then it would be time to consider the issue. But I think for the time being, Kigali has got more than enough restaurants and cafes for everybody to sit down and do their thing. And a lot of young Rwandans as well like to sit in cafes and work. So I don't think that is currently an issue for Rwanda at the moment. I think actually there are enough empty spaces that cafes here would be very welcoming of somebody coming and sitting down and eating and drinking and doing their work. And one last one that was kind of thrown up was the idea that if you have a lot of foreigners coming in and staying for a short period of time and then leaving, that maybe they won't integrate with the community and they won't be adding much value to the country. Again, I'd circle back round to the fact they are spending a lot of money. That in turn can create some friction, because it can push up the prices of things. If shops realise that, they can cater only to foreigners who are going to spend a lot of money, then it's going to be too expensive for locals to shop at. I think that Rwanda is actually... there's a little bit of that being faced at the moment without digital nomad visas. The cost of living is rising in Kigali and across Rwanda. The wealth gap is, as it is in every country, growing. I think that's a universal problem. I don't think digital nomads are likely to add to that too much, but maybe there could be a stipulation that, you get your first visa for 6 months or a year, but if you want to extend it, then you have to show that you're spending, 1 weekend a month working for an NGO or participating in umuganda or something like that. I don't know if that's fair to inflict foreigners on the local community and say, here, do something with this person. But, maybe there could be something in there to kind of encourage people to interact a bit more. I don't really feel like that's a major priority issue at the moment when we're just discussing this kind of visa, but let me know what you think below. What would be a fair way to do it? So just looking around, taking a quick check test, what would make Rwanda attractive to a digital nomad? I think pretty much the same things that already makes it attractive to foreign residents like myself. It's a really beautiful country. It's small enough that you can get around it and you can feel at home. As we always say, it's safe and it's clean. That in itself is nice. Also, as I mentioned, we've got so many cafes and restaurants and just nice places to hang out. Here, Musanze, Gisenyi, there are nice places just to be. And we've also got quite a few Airbnbs now which are cropping up, which I think, you have places that you can land whilst you look around for more permanent housing or just stay in Airbnbs for the duration. I think another thing that makes Rwanda supremely attractive is the way that they have handled visas so far for foreigners. It is very cheap to apply for a residency visa. I pay 150,000 francs every 2 years for my residency visa. That is pretty unheard of. And you feel welcome. I'm going to say it. I know that we do talk a lot about the Rwandan stare and, you know, a little bit about the lack of customer service. But whereas you might not get a bright smile everywhere that you go, you can go anywhere. That's something that is very nice about Rwanda, is as a foreigner, you are free to travel about. And, you know, if you ask for help, people will generally try to help you. And I do feel it's a very relaxed country towards foreigners. It might not be overtly sort of, hello, how are you? How can I help you today? But it also isn't hostile. You know, there is a kind of a relaxed attitude in Rwanda to foreigners. Obviously, when you go out into the country in the rural areas, you're going to get noticed a lot and you might feel it's a bit overwhelming at times. But in the cities, people don't really blink. It's like, yeah, welcome, sit down, would you like a coffee, get on with your work. And you generally get left alone to do your thing. So I do think it's not too difficult a place to live, especially if it's your first time in Africa. It's a really good place to land. It is very calm here and people are very calm here. There's a definite Rwandan reserve that it sort of maybe doesn't come across as very friendly to begin with, but also doesn't come across as overwhelming or hectic or in your face. And also the point about Rwanda that people often forget to mention, but makes such a big difference. No bribery. You know, you're not going to get stopped by police every 5 minutes. You're not going to be asked to pay under the table simply to get your paperwork processed. Things generally work the same way for everybody most of the time. So I think that in itself is very attractive. You know, Africa is huge, massive, massive continent with many countries, and everybody's got different systems and different ways of doing it, but not encountering corruption or overt in your face corruption is really, really just a breath of fresh air. So yeah, I think it's an easy place for foreigners to kind of find their feet. It's different enough to be like, wow, I'm in a really different place, but it's familiar enough to be, oh, this is fine, you know? So yeah, that's what I think makes Rwanda particularly attractive. I think the big questionable side for introducing a digital nomad visa is probably the speed and the reliability of the internet. One thing that you see over and over again when people are asking, you know, which countries have digital nomad visas, it's immediately followed by how fast is the internet or how reliable is the internet? Because a lot of these digital nomad jobs, they involve attending meetings online or their tutoring sessions online. And these are set times that you cannot miss. And the internet can be a bit hit and miss in Rwanda. I currently pay 25,000 francs a month for the most basic fibre optic package with Canal Box. And for that, I'm only going to talk about download speeds here, but for that, I'm supposed to get 50 megabytes per second. I can get that if I plug in an Ethernet cable, but on Wi-Fi I'm at 30. For me and what I need, that is mostly absolutely fine. But occasionally I do find a lag with buffering and streaming and things like that. Additionally to that, we do have unannounced power cuts. The power does go out occasionally. I was at Kigali Heights the other day, a major shopping centre, and everything went out. I'm at Kigali Heights and the lights have gone out. Having a bit of a power cut. But for some reason, all the lights have gone out, all the restaurants have gone dark. But for some reason, Riders Lounge is still blasting music. How is Riders Lounge still playing music when there are no lights on in the rest of the shopping centre? Oh, there we go. They've just come back on. And I've done a few videos where I'm sitting at home and the power just boop goes. And the problem that you've got with that is that Wi-Fi routers do not have battery backup. So if your power goes out, so does your internet. And for a digital nomad, you just you can't have that, because, you know, if you're in the middle of teaching somebody something and suddenly you drop out for hours, it's you can't work that way. So I do think that a little bit of work needs to be done. Just out of curiosity, I asked my family in the UK how much they pay per month and what their internet speed is. And my brother was the one that completely astounded me, because he's paying £30 a month to Virgin and he's getting 350 megabytes per second. I mean, that's a heck of a deal. Now in Rwanda, you can get much faster packages. For example, Canalbox have a very competitive package, 200 megabytes per second for 40,000 francs a month. And one of the fastest connections is with Liquid for 500 megabytes per second, but you are paying through the nose for that. They're also introducing Starlink, which, I don't know, I don't feel very comfortable about Starlink, but it is here. So there are some other packages that you can get. So I'm only talking about my package, which is the cheapest one that you can get. And for most of the time, that's fine for me. Starlink, I think, is the one that will continue working even if the electricity goes down. But I think really as a country, we're going to need to work towards more reliable electricity and slightly faster internet to be really competitive on a digital nomad visa. I also had a little bit of a look at some of the other countries offering digital nomad visas, and this is what we're looking at. One of the other things that we don't have a huge amount of are tech shops. So if people are bringing sort of gaming laptops or high quality production equipment, if it breaks or it needs to be replaced, it's difficult to do in Rwanda because we don't really have big tech shops where you can go and get these things sorted out. Well, you know, most of the time you can find a sort of a backstreet tech guy who can make something work again or patch it up just long enough to get it out the door. But I think we do need to focus a bit more on importing technology and just making that more available, so people are here and they can replace things or they can buy spare parts and they can you know, really feel secure knowing that if they haven't got something, they can get it. And I think just coming back to this thing about the pricing of the visa would be a bit tricky because, you know, you can already get a 30-day tourist visa in Rwanda for something like $50. I mean, it's free for anybody from a Commonwealth country or a La Francophonie country just to walk in, and you get an automatic 30-day tourist visa that you can extend to 90. So I don't think that you could price a digital nomad visa at a higher level because nobody would do it. They'd just enter on the tourism visa and then just hop out of the country and come back and renew it. So, you know, there wouldn't be much incentive to pricing a digital nomad visa at a higher price than a standard residency visa, which I've already said is quite low. So I think really what Rwanda would want to focus on is how do you take the money off people once they're here? And I think there are some gaps in the market here, and I think one of the biggest ones, tourism. Rwanda has totally focused on luxury tourism, kind of at the expense of everything else. And I think if you're really kind of attracting digital nomads, they're looking for cheap day trips. They're looking to just go and spend some of their money seeing things and doing things and just enjoying the country and getting a sense of the country. And we don't have that here in the same way that there is in other countries. So, you know, for example, I went to visit friends in Laos many years ago, and I travelled up the country with some people. And every single hotel that we stayed at, when you came down to the reception desk, they just had a catalogue of things that you could do for the day. Here's what you can do and here's how much it will cost. So you looked in the book and you said, oh, I want to go and look at these caves, these water caves, and I can sit in a rubber ring and go through these water caves, and it's going to cost me X amount of money. And I'd just give the receptionist the money, they would call the person the next morning, there would be the tour guide, we'd go off and do exactly what it said we would do, and came back again. And that was fantastic. I had so much fun in Laos because you could literally just flick through and say, well, do I want to go and do an adventure thing, or do I want to go and do a food thing or a cultural thing? And there were all of these different options, and you just said, I want to do that. here's the money, and off you go and do it. We don't have anything like that here. Even when I was working in Armenia years ago, when you came down to the reception area of the hotel, it had a touch screen and it told you all about the different places, the different regions in the country. And again, you could just tap on something and book yourself a driver for the day and go and do something. And that's what we don't have in Rwanda. We're so focused on, oh, everybody needs to pay $1,500 and go and see the gorillas. It's like, yeah, fine, they might do that once. That's it. They're going to do that once, and it benefits one very specific corner of your tourism plan. But, you know, lots of other people around the country run tourism things and do fun things, but we don't promote those things in hotels. We don't really make it easy for people to book them. And I think we really need to do that in order to take money off people who are coming to stay. I mean, even me as a long-term resident, if I could just walk into a restaurant and find a catalogue of things I could do for the day, I'd go and do more stuff. But it's, you know, yeah, you can't, so I don't. And third, the final one is the customer service. It's definitely a known thing in Rwanda that it is not up to the standard that most foreigners expect. And that sounds terribly snooty. Oh, you know, we expect more. But, you know, a lot of these people coming for a digital nomad visa, they've travelled the world. They've been to lots of countries. But when you're coming from somewhere like Laos, where, you know, people smile at you and you get a bottle of water when you sit down at a table before you've even ordered anything, or you're coming from India, where, you know, people just want to show you around and, you know how to sell you things, or you're used to somewhere with fast food where you place your order and it's there in 10 minutes. It's, you know, it takes an adjustment in Rwanda because a lot of the time people don't smile. A lot of the time people won't preempt information. As the customer, it is up to you to work for what you want rather than for somebody just to provide. It's kind of difficult. You know, you can go to open a bank account and you can be sitting there trying to fill out difficult paperwork, expecting somebody to help you. But instead, people are just holding a conversation between colleagues, like people are just shouting over desks and paying attention to anybody except the customer. You get that a lot here. And I really, really think Rwanda has got to change its game when it comes to customer service because people won't stay. I do think that there needs to be a little bit of work on customer service and sort of on the internet infrastructure and just on selling people experiences when they're in the country. I think that's really gonna help. So yeah, it's an interesting question is, first of all, would it be a benefit to Rwanda? Because I do think Rwanda is a great fit for it. I think it's got a very welcoming attitude towards foreigners. I think that it's already made it so easy for people to come and be resident here. So why not just have people flowing through, you know, working here temporarily and, you know, take a bit of cash off them whilst they're here. I do think Rwanda is also quite technologically facing. You know, we're not there yet, but there is an attitude of we want to be. We want a smart city. We want better digital infrastructure. So I think that would be kind of cool. And a lot of skilled people who pass through are going to come back again and, you know, they're going to hang around. They might even become residents. They might start businesses. So I kind of feel it wouldn't be a huge adjustment for Rwanda to introduce a digital nomad visa. I think the taxation question and the pricing structure would definitely be a conversation. But I think maybe focusing more on taking money off people when they're in the country rather than pricing the visa too high or overtaxing would probably be the way to go. But yeah, I don't know. Let me know what you think. Are you somebody out there in the world who would like to come to Rwanda on a digital nomad visa? Are you a Rwandan who thinks it's a good idea or a bad idea? Let me know below, because I think it's a really interesting conversation and there's definitely a demand. You know, you see people asking in forums, is there a digital nomad visa for Rwanda? And you see how fast this type of remote working has taken off. People are really into this idea, and I don't think it's going to go away. When you look at the forums for digital nomads, they've got hundreds of thousands of people in there who are interested in this. And I think the countries that can make themselves amenable to this form of remote working are going to do really well in the future, because I think it's only going to grow and grow and grow as a market, at least. So yeah, let me know what you think below.